Afternoon, everyone. I think Terry said that she suspected that people in the room might know more about the subject than she did. I know people in the room will know more about the subject than I did because I have been at the Design Council for a year or so. I come from a brand and design background, so this is, in many respects, fundamentally new territory to me. Having said that, I have thrown myself with commitment and verve into understanding the housing market and the changing dynamics of the housing market, both at home and at work. And I'm really pleased to say that this weekend I had a major achievement as my 25-year-old son finally announced he was leaving home. So, his younger sister, however, is a very different matter. I thought I'd just tell you a little bit about the Design Council. Jeremy sort of covered it briefly, but we're an independent charity, and I think possibly not many people know that. We were a government body until 2011, and at that time we became a charity and merged with the Commission for Architecture and the Built Environment. Our mission is about championing great design, which improves people's lives. And I think the fact that we've merged with CABE gives us, I think, a unique remit in the world. It means that we can look at products and services, homes and buildings, and neighbourhoods and communities. And our work is really about tackling problems in business and society, taking a design approach. So, you know, in a sense, what we're doing is giving organisations services and advice right across the piece. So everything from private sector companies of all scales, really, from major developers to tech startups, government both at a central and a local level, charities and other non-profit organisations. And through the CABE team, all the time we're giving advice to householders, developers, communities and local authorities. I thought before I went into specifically what I want to talk about today, which is how our work in ageing in the context of housing and planning services operates, I just tell you a little bit about how we champion great design in the broader built environment. And I think the work that we did with the London Olympics was a great example of looking at something completely holistically. We worked with the ODA from early stage, advising and delivering training on everything from project planning to procurement to building and ultimately the master plan design. And I think that for me, the great thing about something like the Olympics, which I was lucky enough to attend, is that and perhaps a theme of this talk today is that if you design for an aging population, if you design better for an aging population, actually you design better for everyone. And I think that the Olympics is a great example of something that people of all ages could enjoy. A major thing that we then did last year was, because as those of you in this world will know, the dangerous thing was that the fantastic work that went into the Olympics was in danger of getting lost because of the restrictions on publicity. So when that finished, we pulled together all the great design and architecture and developed this hub, the integrated design story of Beyond 2012, which is now going around the world talking about the great work that we did on the Olympics in design and architecture. One of our strategic themes at the Design Council is aging better by design, the operative word clearly being better. And it reminds me back to my days when I was head of brand at Safeway, for those of you who remember the Safeway store, the food group. And every 6 months or so, because designers tend to be younger people, we used to take designers out to store, our design team out to store, and give them all sorts of varieties of eyewear and bodywear to replicate some of the challenging eye problems that an older population has and the arthritis that many people, as they get older, suffer too. And it was fantastic because for 6 months after that, well, no, probably for 4 months after that, we had the most fantastic work that really did embrace the needs of an older population. Then it all went downhill again, so we had to do it again. And it is amazing how you have to keep reminding that younger population about the challenges that an older population faces. a lot of our work at the Design Council in recent times, as Jeremy said, is about bringing, I think, renewed imagination to the topic of ageing, from products and services to housing and everything that really affects us. And this, for example, we run a series of challenges. I really do urge you, if you get a chance, to have a look at our new website. We've done a lot of work in the area of independent living, looking at living with dementia, some of the great work around, I'm sure some of you have seen, of dementia dogs that is happening up in Glasgow, and a variety of other devices and products and services. But this particular one is called Room for Tea, and it's an example of a service that we helped, supported by the Technology Strategy Board. So it's a website that matches older people who have spare capacity in their homes with people in need of low-cost temporary accommodation. And I think at a time of unprecedented demographic change, ensuring that we plan and design the homes and neighbourhoods that allow people to live effectively, independently and healthily is really, really important. I wanted just to give you a bit of a sense of who CABE is, Commission for Architecture and the Built Environment. It really is quite an unparalleled organisation. When I joined the Design Council, I was quite staggered at its breadth and depth. And so apologies for those who know it, but we're quite a small team in Design Council HQ, but we've got an unparalleled national network of around 250 Bs, or built environment experts, and they really are the people who represent the best in their professions: architects, landscape architects, planners, housing professionals, urban designers, engineers. And it means that we can draw on the skills and experience they have from, across all built environment disciplines: housing, public realm, culture, transport. And it means that we can give really hands-on, practical help, expert advice, training, reviews of development proposals and plans. This is the role that we have in planning, in housing and planning for older population, is really really right across the board. I mean, I think you mentioned the Happy Report, and we were very pleased with the Happy Report and how we can build on that. I think one of the key things in there was the talk about a kite mark for, which CABE uses to highlight exciting developments which meet the Happy standards. And I think what struck me particularly about Lord Best's report was how he talked about some of the really basic elements, and I think it goes back to that theme that I'd like to see if I can carry on through this whole talk, is that if you design something that's good for everyone, and if you and particularly what an older population is looking for, then it works for everyone. And I thought one of the most telling things for me was the three things that people put as the most important things in developing housing, which were space, light, and air. And when you think about it, it's so true and yet so simple. Building for Life is something that we have developed in conjunction with the Home Builders Federation and Design for Homes. We've always said that good quality housing is more than just about houses as a product, and it's actually much more about the way that people live their lives in the neighbourhoods and communities in which they live, which is what Building for Life is all about. It's now, I think, the industry standard for well-designed homes and neighbourhoods. It's endorsed by government, and it's used by local authorities, house builders and communities. And with the new accolade of Built for Life, which is the 12 principles, if people pass the 12 principles, they then get a Built for Life accreditation. I think that's going to have a real effect on the way that the quality of housing stock is over the next, particularly as we see more and more housing being developed. It's really designed to create better spaces for the wider community, but there are certain criteria which I think help local authorities and developers consider factors which are particularly relevant for older residents, and that's including things like access to amenities, good transport links, and easy wayfinding. I mean, the Building for Life approach really focuses on creating housing schemes across the board, which integrates into neighbourhoods, so you've got good links to amenities. It's all about place, how a scheme works with or builds on local heritage, and about how you can allow social interaction in streets and homes. I think Derwentthorpe in York is a very good example, a fantastic example of an innovative new scheme that has a raft of age-friendly considerations. It's currently being built, around 540 units, so even in its early phases, in which it is at the moment, it's already got a really great sense of place and identity. It's won a number of design awards already, and it's particularly commendable, I think, that the Joseph Rowntree Housing Trust is going to remain in long-term stewardship. So they'll ensure that the strong design and sustainability ethos that has been built into it from the start will continue as the community develops. Graylingwell Park in Chichester is another good example of a Built for Life commendation which we saw last year, where there's a huge amount of extra care housing integrated into the scheme from the very beginning. And I think I've heard, I haven't been here all day, but I've heard a number of people talking about the importance of learning about great design from elsewhere in the world. And I was lucky enough last year to go to the Rotterdam-based housing association Humanitas, where Hans Beeker has pioneered his Apartments for Life model. And I think that's an excellent challenge to the traditional thinking about nursing homes that we have here in the UK. We also get very heavily involved in neighbourhood and local plans, and we've supported communities and local authorities across the country on neighbourhood plans. Again, drawing on our built environment experts, a critical element, I think, is how local authorities are planning for an ageing population, and they need to build that into the neighbourhood plan from the very beginning. If they can get a vision of what they want, then we can help them make sure that that plan is implemented. I think Balcombe in Essex is a good example, for instance, of a local community that wanted to develop a neighbourhood plan, particularly looking at how they could provide more affordable housing for local people, especially for an elderly population. And we were able to steer the parish council through the process of creating that plan in a place that, to be frank, has typically resisted development of any sort. And I think it's about the way that you involve and integrate the community right across the piece. So we consulted different groups in the right way. We organised workshops with the Neighbourhood Plan Working Group. We used role-play exercises where it helped them to understand the views of different groups, so that people who were involved in the village's development as a whole, from residents to local businesses to landowners, started to understand each other's perspectives and ended up with something that worked much better for everyone across the piece. Much of our current and new housing stock and planning provision is totally inappropriate to the needs of our older population. I think that's something that we've said, and it's absolutely critical in a country where 90% of our older people live in mainstream housing, and I think I'm probably quoting many of the statistics that you've seen already today, but we're likely to see a 60% increase in the number of homes headed by someone over 65 between 2008 and 2033. Quite staggering, really. So I think the consultative design approach that we take is not about nice-to-have aesthetic features, but about creating environments in which people can genuinely live out their later lives and end of life whilst retaining dignity and comfort. It's about how we would wish to provide for our own families and for ourselves. It's quite interesting. One of the I was trying to compare two of the organisations I worked with before I joined the Design Council, and I worked with NS&I, which is National Savings and Investment, and I also worked with Diageo. And the way that marketeers often look at populations in their target markets is to look at age segments. I don't think the Diageo age segment got above age 35, whereas actually the most important age segment for NS&I was the 95 to 110 years old. Because actually that was where the bulk of their target was and where the bulk of their monies lay. And maybe we need to start getting our organisations and companies to think the other way around. Let's get it right for the 95 to 110 years old, and then we'll get it right for everyone else. Just to end, quite recently I met with Mark Prisk. He seems to have more time on his hands at the moment. And he's actually very keen to work with us on 2 possible design briefs. And I'm going to quote directly from an email that he sent us. He's keen to explore 2 new things. I'm very keen that we are going to work on that, hopefully with many other organisations that we know, and also possibly with Jeremy and some of the people in this room as well. He's asked us to look at 2 things: a design code for existing and new homes suitable for people between 60 and 90 years old. And secondly, he's asked us to look at perhaps looking at some design principles for creating communities which are capable of accommodating older people through into their 90s. So I think those are 2 good initiatives which we'll be certainly taking up and hopefully getting other people involved with as well. Thank you very much.